Welcome to this T-Level Tactics video for Root Core 1 of the T-Level Digital Support Services course. In this video, we're going to be looking at configuration and recovery. So, we're going to first of all identify the components of configuration management. Then we're going to explain the importance of documentation and traceability. And finally, we're going to look at some different disaster recovery strategies. Now, before we get started, these videos are not endorsed or sponsored by any education, institution, or qualification awarding body. And T-Level Tactics videos should not be used as a replacement to classroom learning, as the discussion and practical activities with your peers and lecturer will help to expand your thinking and comprehension. These materials are best used as preparation material or revision to reinforce your learning. And finally, if you're studying the T-Level Digital Business Services course, this content works for you as well. However, it is more contextualized towards IT support roles. Let's get started. The change process needs to be carried out in a controlled manner, and configuration management can help to control and manage that change implementation process. Configuration management is the systematic process of managing and controlling the configuration of systems, software, hardware, and documentation throughout their life cycle. There are some key aspects of configuration management that we're going to look at: identification, control, status reporting, and auditing. Identification is the identifying and defining of items that need to be managed. It's assigning unique identifiers to each item for tracking. This could be, for example, an asset tag or sticker on a device that gives it a unique ID. It could also be a version or build number on software or a process. It's also about establishing links or relationships between items, and what works with what else. Control is about evaluating proposed changes and deciding on approval. This makes the change manager and any change approval board also a part of the configuration management process. There's more on that in the previous video. Control is also about protecting and securing assets involved in the change process. For example, if we're replacing a number of computers in an organization, then it's making sure that that hardware is safe and secure and won't go missing before it's required in the change project. It's also about implementing approved changes while maintaining configuration integrity and managing changes to configuration items in a controlled and systematic manner. Status reporting starts with creating a benchmark performance level that processes and systems are expected to meet at a minimum. This is going to be unique to each process and system, but it also means that we can monitor that performance of the process over time to ensure that it's working correctly or bringing in the benefits that we planned. Status reporting also includes tracking version and revision changes to the process to maintain accuracy, and providing visibility into the current state of configurations for monitoring and decision making. The auditing aspect involves recording of changes to assets, when changes were performed, and by who. Tracking asset locations, where they're located physically in the business, or perhaps even where they're located on a network. Scheduled reporting of performance metrics to ensure benchmark performance is being met. And conducting periodic reviews and assessments of configuration items to ensure compliance with standards and requirements. So configuration management is essential for ensuring the stability, consistency, and quality of IT systems and services. Organizations can reduce risks, improve change management processes, enhance system reliability, and facilitate troubleshooting and maintenance activities. And it's the foundation practice in IT service management, playing a critical role in supporting the overall goals and objectives of an organization. So if we're a Patreon member, it's time to take a look at the task sheet on patreon.com/T-Level-Tactics and take a look at the first tasks. I recommend that you spend about 10 minutes on it, so pause the video here, have a go, and come back when you're ready to move on to the next section. Let's have a look at some documentation. What is documentation in a change process? Well, documentation is crucial to ensure that changes are planned, implemented, and controlled effectively. And it serves as a record of all aspects of the change process. It helps to provide transparency, accountability, and traceability. And effective documentation should allow new staff to familiarize themselves with processes and allow replication of those changes in other areas of the business. Now, I highlighted a word on that previous slide, traceability. What is it? Well, traceability is the ability to track and link changes throughout the entire change management process. It establishes responsibility and accountability for the change process to individual people or teams. Project roles are an important part of traceability, giving responsibility to staff and ensuring that all staff involved in the process know who is responsible for what parts of the change. Now, some of those roles might include the creator, the change manager, project manager, who's responsible for planning, executing, and monitoring timelines, resources, and deliverables. They're going to work alongside the change manager. You'll have the change advisory board, subject experts who could be internal from different departments affected, or external if there's a clear knowledge deficit. You may have developers who could design the solution to meet the objectives and requirements of the change request. And testers who will test the implemented solution to ensure it meets quality standards and requirements. Now, each of those roles is going to be responsible for creating documentation during the process, such as change requests that we've looked at before, change approvals, project plans, which can include tasks, timelines, resources, dependencies. There's more on that in another root core element, planning. Creating test plans and quality assurance documents. Again, there's more on that in root core 11, testing. It could be creating auditing documentation, which is evidence of management activities and compliance with policies and legislation. And it could also be developing training materials. Official project documents will have a version number attached to them. This could look like V1.00, it could be a date or time, or a combination of both. And it's usually found in the header or footer of a document, but it may also be in the metadata of digital documents. Any time a document is changed, it should be logged and the version number updated appropriately. And this makes sure that anybody who looks at the documentation is looking at the most up-to-date version and isn't missing anything. For an example of this, we could take a look at the course specification available from NCFE. If you haven't looked at it already, there's a link on the Patreon page. Alternatively, you can head to ncfe.org.uk and search for the qualification reference 603/6901/2. You'll find it in the support materials section. Now, in the specification, you can find the version number and date in the footer of every page. You'll also find the list of changes made since its initial creation at the end of the document on page 300. Now, effective and well-maintained documentation enables accountability throughout the project. Decisions can be audited and verified why they were made, when, and who by. And it allows any potential issues to be avoided in the future if the change is replicated elsewhere in the organization. Okay, if you're a Patreon member, time to take a look at Task 2 back on the task sheet. This task is all about documentation. It's going to take about 20 minutes. So pause the video here, have a go, and come back while we'll look at the final section of the video. So this final part is all about disaster recovery. While every change we initiate with the best intentions, sometimes things don't go to plan. Disaster recovery is a set of policies, procedures, and technologies designed to recover and restore IT systems data and operations in the case of business disruption. It aims to minimize downtime, data loss, and business impact in the event of a disaster or unexpected incident and ensure business continuity. Disaster recovery is covered in more detail in the occupational specialism element of the course. But for our purposes, the important parts of disaster recovery are backups and backup sites. We're going to take a look at both. Now, a backup is a copy of data at a specific time that can be stored and recalled at a later time or date. Backups ideally should be stored away from the original data, hopefully off-site. Cloud-based backups are ideal for this. And this means that it prevents backups from being lost with the original data in case of a disaster, such as fire or a power surge or something. Imagine you have a computer that you back up to an external hard drive. Now, many people will keep this external hard drive near or next to the computer, which will be really unfortunate if something was to happen to that area of where you live. Both the original data and the backup is lost. So what's better practice is to keep that external hard drive with your backup elsewhere. If it can't be in another room away from your computer, then perhaps it could be somewhere else. You could keep it safe with somebody. Make sure to encrypt it if you do that. Now, there are different types of backup that we can perform. We could have a full backup, which is a backup of all data on a system. It's the most comprehensive and time-consuming with the largest storage requirement, but all data is backed up. There's also a differential backup, which is usually used after a full backup has already been performed. A differential backup backs up all changes since the last full backup. So it's not all the data on a system, it's just all the data that's changed since the last backup. There's also an incremental backup. Now, this can be used after any kind of backup, and it backs up changes since the last backup of any type. Apple's Time Machine or Windows File History are really good examples of systems that use incremental backup. There's also replication. Replication isn't quite the same as backup. It's duplication of a system that's kept in the exact same state as a live system. It's more of a form of redundancy that can be switched to in an emergency and be used immediately. Here's an illustration of those different types of backup. At the top, you can see a full backup, where every time a full backup is performed, it backs up all of the data present. In the middle, differential backups, which backs up all the changed data since that original full backup. And at the bottom, an incremental backup, which backs up data that has changed since any type of backup performed. So what are backup sites? Well, backup sites are more complete disaster recovery strategies. It covers more than just the data in an organization or business. And it provides businesses with a business continuity strategy in case of power outage, fire, flooding, or other disasters that could affect the place of work. There are different types of backup site. We could have a cold site, which is a building designated as a space that the business can fail over to in the event of a disaster. The business will still need to equip this space before resuming business operations, and it can take quite a lot of time to make it operational. We've also got warm sites, which is a location where there's some basic equipment already installed, such as power, networking, but we're still going to need to restore our backup data before we can carry on with business. And then we've also got hot sites, which is essentially a direct replica of already operating spaces with live data replication in place and ready to go. These sites will be running the same versions of software and maintained so they can be used in an emergency. While they're the most expensive to maintain, they do allow almost immediate continuation of business operations. Disaster recovery plans are all going to be unique based on the organization, and each organization is going to have their own targets for how much downtime and data loss is tolerable. They'll have targets for how quickly they must be operational again after disaster. But without a disaster recovery plan, if something goes wrong for any reason, there will be no way back. Now, although that was only a brief look at backups and backup sites, there is a task for Patreon members on the task sheet on it. So head back there, take a look at it. It's going to take you a bit longer again, 30 to 45 minutes. Pause the video here, have a go, and come back and we'll finish things off. So in this video, we've identified the components of configuration management. We've explained the importance of documentation and traceability. And we also had a look at some different types of disaster recovery strategies. So let's have a go at an exam question. Explain the concept of traceability and why it is important in the change management process. There are 4 marks available here. So you're either looking to explain really well 2 different points or make 4 smaller points. That might get you all of the marks as well. And that brings us to the end. In the next video, we'll be looking at making changes, which is a bit more in depth into that change process and what's involved. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel, youtube.com/@tleveltactics to see when that video comes out. And if you haven't looked at the Patreon yet, then as always, please do head over there and take a look at everything that's available to Patreon members. Thanks for watching and see you next time.